All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Real Siblings. It ain't easy. A real estate positive. Yeah, already, Eric, already. I'm messing up. Podcast. It just ain't typical. So there you go. I'm Donna, he's Eric, and we are the Real Siblings. We are both professional, I promise, realtors with Keller Williams. And for your reference, I'm just tired. This is what you need to know today. Here we go. Full-blown confession. I did karaoke last night late with young people, and I'm too old for that shenanigans. So as if we always are totally organized, it might be less organized today. So Eric, our goal here is to communicate, educate, connect, and entertain our listeners, right? And
yes, I know that. No.
Thank you, just in case you didn't. And the last podcast, we talked a little bit more in detail about some facts and numbers and things. And this time we're going to go back to lifestyle a little bit and talk about sizes of homes, sizes of villages, things like that. And I asked if I could bring up some things from my childhood that that you may or may not have ever done as we talk about homes. So am I cool with going forward with that, Eric?
That sounds good. Let's go for it.
Okay. So our first home in Lindsay, Ohio, we lived on Main Street, and there was the sidewalk, and then there was a front yard, and then there was the main street. And during the autumn, there were big maple trees, and my friends and I remember taking the maple leaves and creating a house out on that piece of the lawn. And we would pack the leaves and we would make rooms, and sometimes we would bring a pillow or a blanket out, and that would be the bedroom or something like that. And we had moved from there. You were still pretty young by the time when we moved to the other place. But how old were you? I know we've said it before.
It was 72. So I was 7. I was going to have my seventh birthday.
Okay. So, so you didn't necessarily experience this, but there was a huge maple tree between our house and the Weavers, Mrs. Weaver. And then the other thing is at the elementary school back there, it was surrounded by what I guess I would call almost like chain link fence. It was just a wire fence. And in the back corner of the yard, there was the schoolyard back by where we had a high jump and a pole vaulting pit and things like that. There were tons of trees back there too. So when the leaves would fall, we would pack those into the fence and we would create walls and build a house or a fort or whatever. So homes and houses are something that are in our minds from the time we're little kids. And then you mentioned snow, right?
Right. For me, I never used the leaves. Leaves were made for jumping in and burning.
Oh,
but when
preferably in that
the massive public works group from Lindsay plowed the roads, and I think we had one truck that hooked a plow onto it that they plowed the roads, right?
Oh, that works.
The snow, because of the volume of snow we had several years in a row, not just the year of the blizzard, but other years where we had an exceptional amount of snow, we would have piles of snow that were up in front of our house that were 5-6 foot tall.
Yeah.
And solid pack. And I'd take a shovel and dig in, and you'd make the igloo.
Interesting.
So
and that was on Lynn Street then.
That was on Lynn Street. Yeah, not on Main Street. We wouldn't have.
Yeah.
Main Street had to be more clear. They couldn't push snow off. I mean, we ended up with the big pile because they didn't put it in front of the church.
Yeah.
And they pushed it out of the intersection, because we were the biggest lot. We kind of always ended up with the biggest pile.
Back there, was it back by the alley kind of? Or just...
No, this would have been in front, over actually on Maple Street side, but by the church. The big maple tree that was there next to the walkway over to the church is where the biggest pile always ended up.
So it's kind of funny you making that joke about the public works, because as we talk today about big cities, medium size, towns and villages, were those just the local farmers, or did Dave Zimmerman, did the construction guys do that? Because as we got older, I remember Zimmerman's coming by. And did every farmer have a plow? Because I don't think that town did it, unless they were a volunteer fireman too. Like, I don't know.
I honestly, I do not know. Now, one of our most consistent listeners probably has a better idea on that. So I would expect we're going to hear from
Yeah,
Shelley.
Sally will probably tell us.
Help us correct our misremembrances.
And you know what? Rachel might also, or Daryl or Russ, you know, some of the people that we had on last year as we.
Yeah, well, I think I just picture the one truck, the same truck that used to fog the streets
Yeah,
for mosquito season,
yeah,
was also the same one that would haul off big trash if we had a flood, if we had a tree branch or something like that that had come down in some storm,
right.
was also the same one that had a plow that hooked on front of it, and they'd plow the streets.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, that was just interesting because that kind of wrapped into what we say.
I think Main Street, because it was 590, might have gotten a little bit of attention from the county if we had county trucks that came through.
Yeah. But when we were down at the end of the road on the north end in our last house before we moved back to Arizona, I remember one time the weather was so bad that, I don't know, Gil must have been at work and Dad was taking me to get groceries, and the driveway was clear when we left and then plowed in when we came back.
Oh, the straight had come down and now you had that big pile and you couldn't get in the
We
driveway.
couldn't get in the driveway, so I had to get out and walk groceries up to the house and stuff like that at that point, because they can't, clearly you can't plow the street, the main street, and not block somebody's driveway.
And it was up on to us as the homeowners to do that.
Yeah, yeah. So tell everybody kind of what your thoughts were as we ventured into this arena.
Okay, so when we're talking the homes and that sort of thing, for me, it is with recent conversations about size and what's, I'll say, an appropriate size, and how people see size lot so distinctly different.
So the lot or the house?
For the lot, the house, the neighborhood, the city. Do you live? We started and we mentioned the public works. So the closest town, even though I officially live in a town called Pipe Creek, which is not a town, it's a post office in an intersection.
Yeah.
It cannot be incorporated because there's not enough population to become an incorporated town. It is a zip code. But next door is the city of or town of Helotes. Helotes now is inside the official perimeter boundary lines of the city, approaching 15,000 people.
How many was it when you moved there, however many years ago?
It was half that size.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah, we've been out here 22 years. It's more than doubled. And I mean, we got out here in 2002. It hadn't incorporated until, because again, it was not big enough to incorporate. There has to be a certain population number in the state of Texas in order for something to be officially large enough to be incorporated. And then the citizens who have to vote on that in order for it to happen. That's 2,500 people. So it took from the 1800s, which is one of the oldest houses, historical houses in Helotes, up until 1986, over 130 years before it was large enough to incorporate.
Okay, random question. Since
Yep.
I've driven that route, you know, every time we would come there, do I drive by that really old house? Is it one that would be?
You do not. It's off on a side street, the Marnock farm.
Is that where that Mexican restaurant is that basically?
It's near where the El Chaparral Mexican restaurant is at. Yes,
Yeah.
it is close in that general vicinity.
Okay.
But now it's doubled in size. And a lot of the original houses were on much larger tracts of land.
Right.
And as we get closer and closer, those lots get smaller and smaller and smaller. And I feel like anything less than a quarter acre is small. And we know that the standard dimension now in our area for a new builder going in and building and developing in the subdivision is between 0.16 to 0.18 acres.
That's even
our standard lot size.
So you and I just looked up on the tax records because I live in a townhouse, for those of you that don't know, and it's connected and we have garages and I have a courtyard in the front and a courtyard in the back. But I hadn't thought about how big it was. And Eric said, oh, is it about 0.12? And we looked it up and it's actually smaller. It's 0.01. 103. Anyway, it's just like small.
just over a tenth of an acre.
Just over a tenth.
So that officially would be just over 4,350 feet.
Right, right. Where if you look at that, that seems like nothing, right? For me, it's a lock and go place, right? It's easy. My neighbors watch. Neighbors called me and told me yesterday I left the garage door open and they shut it for me.
And even in front of your front courtyard, between the sidewalk, curb, and that is xeriscaped. You have a couple of plants. So essentially you have no yard maintenance.
Right. I have a tree and a couple of plants. Yep.
Because your back courtyard is entirely paved, right? Paver stones.
Well, that's where I planted an orange tree and some flowers, but because I'm in a cul-de-sac, and you and I talked about this too. So for those of you looking, there's a visual behind Eric of a community, and you can kind of see the end lots and things like that that have more space around them. And I live in a cul-de-sac that you can access where the electrical lines and things are. People can come in from behind. So the HOA owns that space, but there are trees and stuff behind me that I'm not responsible for that also give me some privacy and a little bit of a feeling of a bigger yard, and I don't have to take care of it. So that,
and you walk out in your backyard and I look at it, it's like, wow, this is pretty spacious.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't look tiny. Yeah.
It doesn't feel tiny, whatever that means.
Right. Right. Yeah.
But we've mentioned how big Lindsay is. Lindsay is at largest was close to 700 people. It's now officially, I think last I checked, 450 people live in Lindsay. Yeah. No traffic lights, no blinking lights, stop signs only.
Yeah.
450 people. That is a village. That does not even in my mind qualify as being a small town.
Yeah. Yeah.
Helotes now is a small town, suburb of a very large metropolitan area of San Antonio at 2.5 million people.
That's interesting.
Now, it all kind of flows together.
Yeah.
You go through an intersection and suddenly you're in San Antonio. You don't feel that transition. I don't think they even bother to have a sign there anymore on Bandera Road.
Okay.
But you consider that. And then we talked beforehand, I had friends who did 6 months down in Mexico. And they said, we went to this village.
Oh.
No.
Oh, okay.
This is the village in the mountains in the wine country. And I cannot remember what the name of it was.
Okay.
But the village was 500,000 people. Because Mexico City is the largest single metropolitan area in North America.
And what did you look up? Because we talked
at just under 10 million.
Okay. I swear to God, it felt like more than that even.
I thought the number was more than that too.
So again, maybe that's Mexico City without any of the surrounding attached,
yes.
communities.
And then we took it even further than that. And right now the city with the highest single population in the world is Tokyo. And that number that I saw recently was 37 million people.
Wow.
And again, when we started talking about this and what's relative, what's size, what's big, what's small, this village in Mexico at 500,000 people has a higher population than several states in the United States.
Wyoming, one of them?
Wyoming is one of those. Wyoming, Montana, they're just, you look at those things and it's like, there's a reason there's only 4 state representatives for Wyoming. And because of what the population is.
And when we were growing up, didn't you think Fremont felt big?
Fremont was the big town. It had multiple grocery stores, multiple gas stations, traffic lights, school,
all the stuff.
All the stuff. We had a little elementary school. And yes, I know that was the 8th grade when you were there. And but has your perception of what's large or big or small changed being out in Tucson?
A little bit, because Tucson is second only to Phoenix in the state, and Phoenix is now known as a small LA. So because I think there's this whole not only miles and circumference and stuff, but also tall buildings. We don't have a lot of tall buildings. So even though we are a city in the state, I mean, there's like Phoenix, Tucson, Flagstaff, right? Those are the 3 major metropolitan areas in the state of Phoenix, in the state of Arizona. Um, it still feels, it was called the old Pueblo. It still feels very much like the old Pueblo because it's spread out and you can randomly see the university and the downtown when you're up in the mountains because there's not a big city. San Antonio, way more city-like when you get down there. I can never remember like the 16 and the 1604. Which is the main one that we turn off when we head to your house?
You turn off of 1604 onto Highway 16.
On the
So
highway.
if you're in San Antonio, it is the loop
Yeah.
1604, which ties
Okay.
into a rural highway.
And
Highway
I feel like
16
we're
would have been like 590 going through Lindsay.
and maybe because we only have one interstate around our city, I-10, right? And it doesn't make loops around like in Phoenix and like in San Antonio. I mean, I kind of feel like as soon as we hit anymore the 1604, we're in town, you know, from your place. Whereas I don't know that 20 years ago I felt that way so much. So I can only imagine how you feel.
Yeah, there were places that you used to feel like, well, heck, between San Antonio to Austin,
Mm-hmm.
if you're on Interstate 35 and you make that drive, you used to feel like you left San Antonio. You went past a couple of exits that had towns that didn't even reach to the highway, Cibolo, Shirts.
Yeah.
You got up to New Braunfels. You had gone a stretch where you were out in the country.
Yeah.
Then New Braunfels to San Marcos to Austin. That now all almost completely ties together. The megalopolis or whatever, I think the term that they use. And honestly, there have been recent conversations about creating a central airport for the two cities, just like Dallas Fort Worth has, that there will be an Austin San Antonio central airport, and they need to start planning for that now in order to figure out where it's going to be, allocate the traffic. And honestly, it probably would be someplace between north on 35 between San Antonio and or between New Braunfels and San Marcos would be the one that would make the most sense to be a regional airport serving that area now.
So isn't the San Antonio airport already off 35?
No, it's over off of Loop 410.
Okay. Okay. Anyway,
and 281, and it's just, again, part of my thought process on this, indicated by several different things.
Yeah.
If you remember back when we had Teresa on, when Teresa Barnaby, our friend, had joined us, and she talked about being from a small town.
Yep.
Her town across the Ohio River in Virginia was
12,000?
10 times larger than at least what we grew up in.
Yeah.
So small town.
Right.
Yeah.
With factories and stuff. And Lindsay always has been farmers and bedroom community. Always. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we had talked about the fact that our house that I live in on our 13 acres.
Yep.
That's a huge piece of property for some people.
Yeah.
But it's not big enough that I can really, they're to a point now in our area where they would restrict the number of animals I could have if I had a real agricultural process and an exemption here because of carrying capacity for the land. You have to have more land to have more animals. And a farmer knows that, but that the government has to step in and say, no, this is all you can have on that small piece of property. And if you've watched the video, you just saw me do air quotes. Listening, I'm pointing that out to you because 13 acres is a small property. Even my neighbors, I've got neighboring properties that are 100 acres.
Wow. Wow. You know, I know that we've talked about this as a family, that you and Dan both, you've been out in the country for a while. That's always kind of what's drawn you there. Dan, when he finally sold a home after 30 years, they moved out to the country overlooking a lake and stuff. Yep. You both were kind of biology outdoors. You were always those people in our family that wanted that. I don't know that I had any idea about anything.
No, you were building houses with leaves in the front yard.
Correct. There, I was busy doing that.
And you were already doing a tiny home back then, because the front yard in Main Street was not the largest front yard. If you were making bedrooms and a dining room and a kitchen in there,
it might have only had 2 bedrooms. I don't remember the details of it, but and now Ken has gone more. He's in a town and he's got a pretty backyard, but nothing like what he had when he was in Virginia or in Mississippi, where they had, where he was kind
right?
of very rural. So I have any of the communities near you. Again, I keep looking at the picture behind you. Marana, which is one of our suburbs, or Marana, has made us. There's a rule about the amount of green space they have to have. So as the desert has grown and Tucson has grown, we only have northwest or southeast. Those are our boundaries, because to the
Right.
southwest is one of the reservations and stuff. So as we grow towards Phoenix and stuff, there's going to be these breaks based on the tribal grounds and things like that, whatever we can do. But Marina makes people, or their zoning allows 30% to still be green space. So what that might mean is that your home is on a narrower lot and you can practically touch the neighbor, but you have a view fence behind you and there's nothing built behind you. There might be a wash, there might be open space. So it creates that image of space, again, without maybe the maintenance, do you have areas
Okay.
doing that?
Yes, there are, but some of it has been development
Yeah.
that's taking advantage of certain tax code.
Mm-hmm.
You're saving green space just to save green space, right?
Right.
Just to say it has to have X amount of space. If you have 100 acres, 30 of those acres have to be reserved for something, right? That's what we're saying.
Yeah.
Here, because of these protected species and wildlife requirements, there's an area to the north and east of downtown San Antonio that is perfect habitat for a specific bird, the golden-cheeked warbler. The golden-cheeked warbler, if you have land reserved for it, gets a tax break. So there are developments who saved space to save habitat that the entire community benefits from by having undeveloped space, in order to everybody collectively get the tax space, because they're providing habitat for wildlife.
I'm going to have to make sure my friend Beth knows this, because she's very active in the Audubon Society, and I have now started paying way more attention to birds than I used to. Golden-cheeked warbler. All
yes. Right. And so I have the neighborhood behind me.
Yeah.
And you can see the curved roads.
Yep. Yep.
You can't, it's not just row after row after row.
No.
Now, we have developers and builders who are building that right now.
Yeah.
And it is some of what I consider to be the most unattractive development. Here, we don't get stucco. It's hardy plank cement fiber sides. You've got a choice of 3 colors. There is a front step. There is spam. There's nothing to it. It's the 0.16 acres.
Yeah.
It's that 50-foot front. By the time you add a 2-car garage, it's 40 foot of foundation. You got 5 foot on either side. It goes back to a back fence. Nothing about it appeals to me. Nothing.
Yeah.
At least the neighborhood that I pictured behind me with the curved streets adds some distinction.
They've got some.
Your property is not exactly identical to
right.
the next property. Your 0.1 acre in your townhome community is probably pretty much the size that's for every single one of the houses that's part of the community. Yes. It's somewhere between that 0.1 to 0.12, I would bet. The biggest ones probably have that 0.12 if they're on the end unit and they've got a little bit of that yard that comes around the side, right?
Right. Yeah. The
fact that you use the word green space or term green space in Arizona made me laugh. We have the Shepherds and Sailors, who does our intro music, would argue the fact that there is no such thing as green space.
He might say that certain times of year, certain times of year. So, so Eric, part of that conversation and all of this about where you are, where you're from, and all of that, also then creates what's normal in our heads. So if we watch the international housing shows and we're watching Singapore or Japan or whatever, and we see the tiny spaces they live in, we kind of like we as Americans can be like, we freak out. And I have just had two conversations in the last week and a half to 2 weeks. I think I told you we have a new pastor that came here, and he's a Pacific Islander. So he went to seminary in Tonga, and then did his first appointment in Page, Arizona, which is up north. And he told me he had a 5-bedroom house. And so in my brain, he had a big house. And when I went and visited him when they moved in here, I said, how do you like the house? He goes, oh, it's great. We have so much space. And I said, this is a 3-bedroom. And he goes, but Donna, that was a community like the mining communities where all the homes were built side by side by side by side. So yeah, there were 5 bedrooms, but they were tiny. They were 10 by 10. They weren't, they were designed for families in a small space. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. And then simultaneously, a couple of retiring Air Force chiefs who are coming from Connecticut, when I sent out my questionnaire about what they want, they're like, single story, no more steps, no more steps, no more steps. We've been in 3 stories for X number of years, however many years. So what has been their normal there isn't going to be the normal here. And they are looking for single story, more ranch style with view fencing and space behind so that they don't have that closed in the field. So it's just it's fascinating to think about what becomes normal depending on where you live and what your expectations are, right?
And what you I'll even say maybe psychologically you have to go through to
Yeah,
go, I'm in 2,400 square feet. When we had Evie on in episode 44, she used the terminology about someplace you're going to age in place.
yeah,
Guess what? When I bought my forever home 22 years ago, I was 36 years old. I just had my 59th birthday. The idea of taking care of 13 acres continuously and the house and everything that goes with it, going, I can see why people downsize.
yeah, yeah. Well, so all that land and the space and the beautiful views that you have also then become the care and the maintenance associated with.
I was cutting some trees down because we have some sumac trees, which were starting to get a little bit too tall and starting to block the breeze on our screen porch,
Ah,
and getting tall enough that they were obstructing Jeannie's view. Not mine yet,
that's kind
but
of steep outside there.
I know that's how much the trees have grown.
I'm
I'm
like,
I'm cutting down trees that were 12 to 14 feet.
wow.
Now, trees that were that height that had a 3-inch trunk. It's not like it
They're
was
okay,
big.
so they're
It
tall.
was
That's
not like it was big work,
yeah,
but just the mere fact that it's there and you're going, oh, we're feeling closed in.
yeah,
And
yeah,
we're on 13 acres. How can you feel closed in on 13 acres? That's part of this whole conversation. What the how what's house, what's normal, what reasonable from a size standpoint.
yeah.
Um, I think the picture you left up behind you, which I know everybody can't see, it's
Reasonable.
the toilet refrigerator, right?
It is. It is apparently. And it's funny to think about. Somebody did this. Somebody somewhere did this, right? It's got, and I'm going to tell you that some of the drinks in there look like the drinks from Mexico and stuff. Just the
Oh
label.
yeah, all the ones on the door.
Yeah, yeah. And so, so who feels inclined to have a toilet with a refrigerator attached?
Because that's all the space you have.
And so you gotta fill it. And so and this goes to our clients that say I'm downsizing, I've got 6,000 square feet, I need 3,000. And then the other people who are like, there's no way on this earth I want to take care of 3,000 square feet. I live alone, I want to be able to go alone, I don't want to pay a housekeeper that much. So what's normal in what area, you know? So
I have a friend at our brokerage who has a listing that will go live this coming week.
Yeah.
It is a small municipality that was originally a suburb of San Antonio. Like many other suburbs, it's been completely consumed. We've talked about that in several episodes.
yeah.
It sits on 3 acres. They built an 11,000 square foot house, and they've been in it for 3 years. 11,000 square feet.
Wow.
Ooh, you sit there if you're living in 2,400 going, what do I do in a space that's 5 times this size?
Yeah. Yeah.
How many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, how many whatevers do you need?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know you see the listings too that come out of California and the latest celebrity, the stuff that's making the news. And
Yeah.
I think it's Chris Pratt trying to sell one of his places just recently. And it's like, he's having trouble selling the 6,000 square foot. Is that because it's too small for a celebrity's house? Is it because of where it was located?
Yeah.
What is it that?
Yeah.
Because heck, I could live comfortably in 6,000 square feet as long as I had somebody else to help do all the cleaning and everything
Yeah,
for it.
exactly. I'm always like more towels, more toilet paper, more mops, more everything. I don't know. I would rather take my money and travel abroad and go
And
skiing.
travel abroad. Yes,
Yeah.
you would.
Yeah. What do we want to
You'll
eat?
make it to Portugal before I do. I know you will.
Did you want to go to Portugal? Did you?
I'll go see Ariel and Tucker.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. 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 I'll probably get there before you. I don't know, but who knows? Who knows? This year it's Italy. So
All right. So
yeah, you gonna wrap
it would be interesting if anybody wants to chime in. Both of our emails are always at the bottom of every single one of our podcasts. And you can send us a message. You can respond on your different player. You can respond on what is big, what's important to you from size. Is it lot? Is it city? Is it the house? Is it all 3? Is it one that dominates the other? There's so many things that can go directions in this conversation, but that's size is relative to what you're used to and what your expectations are.
Yeah. Before you close this out, I just think it's interesting to remind our listeners that we chose the 16th and the 28th because of our birthdays. And so you just had your birthday, June 16th, and mine.
59.
Yeah, mine will be pretty soon. We'll all be in our 60s for like it.
Next year, one more year that we're not all pushing 60, and then Dan's already going to be at the upper edge.
Yeah, yeah.
Because we're 9 years apart.
So these come out on the 16th and the 28th, which were the dates that we chose based on our birthdays. And I got to say thank you to my brother because he's always the one that gets that work done. I just upload these videos and you see what you see. And if you look at the videos, you know that. Anyway, so Eric, why don't you wrap it up for us?
All right. Thanks for listening. Thanks for joining us. We do not take it for granted that you take time out of your day, your week, your month in order to spend a little bit of time listening to us go a million different directions. As we conclude this episode today, we hope that our conversation has made you think about where you're at, what you do, how you chose what you do, and maybe if you're in the process of making a change, think about it ahead of time. Where you want to go, what size is important to you.
Right.
We grew up in an idyllic little town. We've talked about that today, from building leaf homes to snow igloos. That is part of our memories. Our goal is to help you find a place for your family to call home, build your great memories, and create a wonderful life. Remember, we're both real estate agents. Donna's in Tucson. I'm in San Antonio. We're connected all around the world. We can help you in our regions, our towns, or we can help refer you and connect you with a great real estate agent around the world. Until next time, I'm Eric.
And I'm Donna.
And we are Real Siblings.